Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.
The phone screen lit up at 2:47 a.m., and I watched my husband Brandon read the text message with the strangest expression I'd ever seen on his face. It wasn't fear. It wasn't shock. It was concentration. The kind of concentration you see on someone's face when they're calculating a math problem, not when they've just learned their mother has been kidnapped. "Ashley," he whispered, shaking my shoulder as if I hadn't already been wide awake, staring at the ceiling. "Ashley, wake up. Something terrible happened." I sat up in bed and looked at the message over his shoulder. Unknown number. The text read, "We have your mother. $250,000 cash. Instructions to follow. Do not contact police or she dies." Below it was a photo of Linda, my mother-in-law, bound to a chair with duct tape over her mouth, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Very dramatic, very theatrical. And if you looked closely, which I did, you could see that the rope around her wrists wasn't even tied. It was just looped, like a scarf draped over a coat rack. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back 6 days to the moment everything started unraveling, the moment Brandon found out about my inheritance. 6 months before that night, I was the happiest I'd ever been. Genuinely, deeply, boringly happy. The kind of happiness that doesn't make for good stories. Brandon and I had been married for 4 years, together for 6. We lived in a modest 3-bedroom ranch in Maple Grove, a suburb about 20 minutes outside of Minneapolis. White siding, blue shutters, a lawn that Brandon mowed every Saturday with religious devotion. Our mortgage was $1,847 a month, and we split it down the middle. That was how we did everything, 50-50, right down the center. I'm a dental hygienist. I make decent money, around $68,000 a year. Brandon works as a regional sales manager for a company that distributes industrial cleaning supplies. He pulls in about $72,000, sometimes more with commissions. We weren't rich. We weren't poor. We were that middle slice of America where you can afford a vacation to Cancun every other year, but you still check the price of avocados at the grocery store. We'd met at a friend's barbecue, Megan and Tyler's 4th of July party in 2018. Brandon was standing by the cooler, wearing a faded Vikings jersey, and arguing with someone about whether ranch dressing was an acceptable condiment for pizza. I told him it absolutely was, and he looked at me like I'd just solved world hunger. We talked for 3 hours that night. He was funny, easy to be around, and he had this way of making you feel like the most interesting person in any room. 6 months later, we were living together. A year after that, he proposed at the Mall of America, right next to the Lego store, which sounds ridiculous, but was actually perfect because we'd had our 3rd date there. His mother, Linda, was another story. Linda Morrison was 61 years old, twice divorced, and had opinions about everything. She lived in a condo in Bloomington, drove a white Lexus she couldn't really afford, and believed that no woman on earth was good enough for her son, especially not me. From the very first Thanksgiving I spent with the Morrison family, Linda made it clear that I was a guest in her son's life, temporary, replaceable, and slightly beneath her standards. "You're a dental hygienist," she'd said that first Thanksgiving, passing me the cranberry sauce without making eye contact. "That's practical. Brandon always dated girls with more ambitious career goals, but I suppose someone has to clean teeth." Brandon had laughed nervously. "Mom, come on." "What? I said it was practical. That's a compliment." It was not a compliment. Over the years, I learned to manage Linda. I smiled at her passive-aggressive comments about my cooking. I ignored her suggestions that I should do something with my hair. I bit my tongue when she rearranged my kitchen cabinets during visits because the flow was all wrong. I did all of this because I loved Brandon, and because I believed that a good marriage sometimes means swallowing small indignities for the sake of peace. But here's the thing about swallowing indignities. Eventually, your stomach fills up. Our life had a rhythm. Monday through Friday, we worked. Saturday mornings, Brandon mowed the lawn while I did laundry. Saturday afternoons, we'd run errands together. Target, Home Depot, maybe Costco if we needed bulk paper towels. Sunday was for rest. Church if we felt like it. Football if Brandon had his way. A long walk around the neighborhood if I had mine. We had a joint checking account for bills and separate accounts for personal spending. We had a shared Google Calendar. We had a chore wheel on the refrigerator. It was organized. It was predictable. It was safe. My best friend Jennifer used to joke that our life was aggressively normal. She meant it as a gentle tease, but I took it as the highest praise. I'd grown up in chaos. My parents divorced when I was 9, my dad disappeared to Arizona with a waitress from Denny's, and my mom raised me and my brother Kevin on a receptionist salary and sheer stubbornness. Chaos was my childhood. Normal was my trophy. My mom, Diane, was the toughest woman I've ever known. She worked 2 jobs for most of my teenage years, never complained, and somehow managed to save enough to put a down payment on a small 2-bedroom apartment in downtown Minneapolis when I was in college. That apartment was her pride and joy. 740 square feet of freedom, a place no man could take from her. She paid it off in 15 years. When Mom passed away in March, pancreatic cancer, diagnosed in November, gone by spring, she left me everything. The downtown apartment, her savings account, and a life insurance policy I didn't even know she had. The apartment was appraised at $410,000. The savings account held $38,000. The life insurance policy was worth $175,000. Total inheritance, roughly $623,000. I didn't tell Brandon right away, not because I was hiding it, but because I was grieving. My mother had just died. The last thing on my mind was money. I was barely functioning, going to work on autopilot, crying in the shower, eating cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. The estate went through probate, the lawyer handled the paperwork, and I signed things when I was told to sign things. It all felt abstract, like it was happening to someone else. By August, the probate was settled. The apartment was in my name, the money was in my account, and I still hadn't mentioned any of it to Brandon. Was that wrong? Maybe. Probably. But every time I thought about bringing it up, something stopped me. A voice in the back of my head, Mom's voice actually, saying, "Keep something for yourself, Ashley. Always have a door you can walk through alone." I didn't understand why that voice was so loud. Our marriage was good. Brandon was a good husband. We were fine. Then came the afternoon that changed everything. It was a Tuesday in late September. I'd left work early because of a canceled appointment and came home to find Brandon in our home office, sitting at my desk with my laptop open in front of him. He didn't hear me come in. I stood in the doorway and watched him for a moment. He was scrolling through something, his brow furrowed, his lips moving slightly like he was reading to himself. "Hey," I said, "what are you doing?" He jumped, actually jumped like a kid caught with his hand in a cookie jar. He closed the laptop, not slowly, not casually, but slammed it shut with both hands. "Nothing," he said, "just checking email." "On my laptop?" "Mine's updating. I needed to look something up real quick." I nodded. It was plausible. His laptop did update constantly. He was always complaining about it. But something about the way he'd closed that screen, the speed of it, the guilty flash in his eyes, made my stomach tighten. That night, after Brandon fell asleep, I opened my laptop and checked the browser history. He'd cleared it. Every single entry. Gone. Brandon had never cleared browser history in his life. I knew this because he was the kind of person who had 47 tabs open at all times and never closed any of them. My hands were shaking as I opened my email. Nothing seemed disturbed. I checked my bank accounts, all normal. Then I checked the one thing I'd been most careful about keeping private, the estate documents. The folder on my desktop labeled Mom's Things. It had been opened at 3:12 p.m. I'd left work at 2:30. He'd found it. All of it. The apartment appraisal, the insurance payout, the savings account statements, everything. I sat in the dark living room, my laptop glowing in my lap, and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter and more dangerous. Awareness. The next morning, Brandon was different. Not obviously different. You'd have to know him as well as I did to notice. He was cheerful. Too cheerful. He made me coffee without being asked, which he hadn't done in months. He kissed my forehead on his way out the door and said, "Love you, babe. Have a great day." His smile was wide and bright, and for the first time in our marriage, it didn't reach his eyes. I said, "Love you too," and watched him pull out of the driveway. Then I called Jennifer. "He found the inheritance," I said. "Oh, no," she replied. There was a pause. "How's he acting?" "Like a golden retriever who just discovered where I hide the treats." Jennifer was quiet for a long moment. "Ash, listen to me. Don't do anything yet. Just watch. See what happens next." "You think he'll do something?" "I think money changes people, even good people. And I think you need to pay very close attention to what happens in the next few days." I promised her I would. I had no idea that the next few days would include a kidnapping, a ransom demand, a hidden camera, a confrontation at a police station, and the end of my marriage. But that Tuesday, all I knew was this. My husband had found out I was sitting on over $600,000, and for the first time since I'd known him, he'd lied to me about something that mattered. I poured my coffee down the sink. I'd lost my appetite. That evening, Brandon came home from work with flowers. Not the cheap bouquet from the gas station. Real flowers from an actual florist. Peach roses and white lilies, wrapped in brown paper with a little card that said, "Just because." "What's the occasion?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "No occasion." He set the vase on the kitchen counter and wrapped his arms around me from behind. "Can't a guy bring his wife flowers for no reason?" "You haven't brought me flowers since our anniversary. In April." He laughed. "Then I'm overdue." I arranged the flowers in the vase and watched him from the corner of my eye. He was standing by the refrigerator, scrolling through his phone, and I caught the smallest glimpse of a text exchange before he tilted the screen away. "Who's that?" I asked. "Just work stuff. Rick's bugging me about the Q4 numbers again." Rick was his boss. That part was probably true. But the way he angled the phone, that was new. Brandon had never been secretive about his phone. He'd hand it to me to read funny memes. He'd leave it on the kitchen counter unlocked while he showered. This new guardedness settled over him like a coat he was still learning to wear. That night, I lay in bed next to him, listening to his breathing slow into sleep, and thought about calling my brother Kevin. Kevin lived in Denver now, worked in construction, and had the emotional intelligence of a cinder block. But he was loyal, and he was practical. He'd tell me I was overreacting, or he'd tell me to lawyer up, and either way, I'd know where I stood. But I didn't call Kevin. Not yet. Instead, I did something I'd never done before in our marriage. I checked Brandon's phone while he slept. My heart hammered so loud I was sure it would wake him. I pressed his thumb against the sensor, gently, so gently, and the screen unlocked. I opened his messages and scrolled to the most recent conversation. It wasn't with Rick. It was with Linda. The last message from Brandon, sent at 9:47 p.m., read, "Don't worry, Mom. I'll figure out a way to get the money. She doesn't even know I know." And Linda's reply, sent at 9:52 p.m., "You need to move fast, sweetheart, before she hides it or puts it in a trust. That apartment alone is worth almost $500,000. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Then I placed the phone back on the nightstand, exactly where it had been, and rolled onto my side. My mother's voice echoed in my head. "Always have a door you can walk through alone." I didn't sleep that night, not a single minute. I just lay there in the dark, next to the man I'd loved for 6 years, and listened to him breathe, and wondered who he really was. The next morning, Wednesday, I went to work like nothing had happened. I smiled at my patients. I scraped plaque off molars. I made small talk about flossing habits and upcoming dental appointments. And inside my chest, something cold and hard was forming, like a stone being pressed into shape by the weight of everything I now knew. During my lunch break, I sat in my car in the parking lot of the dental office and called Jennifer. I read his texts, I said. And? He's talking to Linda about the money. He told her he'd figure out a way to get it. She told him to move fast before I put it in a trust. Jennifer exhaled slowly. Okay, Ash. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to call a lawyer. Today. Not tomorrow, not next week. Today. I don't even know if I want a divorce, Jen. Maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe he was just venting to his mom. Venting? I'll figure out a way to get the money. That's not venting. That's planning. She was right. I knew she was right. But the part of me that had spent 6 years building a life with Brandon, the part that remembered the Mall of America proposal and the Saturday morning lawn mowing and the way he used to rub my feet during movie nights, that part wanted desperately to find an innocent explanation. I didn't call a lawyer that day. Instead, I did something arguably worse. I decided to test him. That evening, I came home and sat down across from Brandon at the kitchen table. He was eating leftover pasta and scrolling through his phone. The flowers he'd bought me the day before were already starting to wilt. The lilies were drooping, petals curling at the edges. "Hey," I said casually. "So I've been thinking about Mom's apartment." Brandon looked up. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. "What about it?" "I think I should sell it. The market's really hot right now, and honestly, it's just sitting there. I could probably get 400, maybe 420. I watched his face like a hawk watching a field mouse. Every micro-expression, every flicker. "Sell it?" he repeated. "That's a big decision. What would you do with the money?" "I don't know. Put it in savings, maybe invest it. Mom would have wanted me to be smart about it." "Yeah, of course." He nodded slowly, setting his fork down. "But, I mean, have you thought about what we could do with that money? Together?" There it was. We. Together. The words landed on the table between us like coins dropped on a counter. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Well, we've always talked about upgrading the house. Or I could finally quit working for Rick and start my own distribution business. We could pay off the mortgage, invest the rest, really set ourselves up." "Brandon, that's my mom's apartment. That's her money." "I know that, babe. I'm not saying it's not. I'm saying we're a team. Married people share things. That's kind of the whole point." His voice was reasonable. His expression was open and earnest. And if I hadn't read those texts the night before, I might have been completely convinced. I might have nodded and said, "You're right, let's talk about it." But I had read those texts, and now every word coming out of his mouth sounded rehearsed. "You're right," I said. "Let me think about it." He smiled, that bright, wide smile that no longer reached his eyes. "Take your time. No pressure." No pressure. Right. After dinner, I went into the bathroom, turned on the shower so the sound would cover my voice, and called Kevin. "Hey sis, everything okay?" "No," I said. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to not freak out." I told him everything. The inheritance, Brandon finding the documents, the texts with Linda, the conversation at dinner. Kevin listened without interrupting, which was unusual for him. When I finished, there was a long silence. "Ash, you need to protect that money, like yesterday. Move it. Put it somewhere he can't touch it." "It's already in my personal account. He doesn't have access." "Good. Keep it that way. And the apartment, is his name on anything?" "No, it went through probate in my name only. Mom's will was specific." "Then he has no legal claim. But if he starts pushing, or if things go south, you need a lawyer. A good one, not some strip mall divorce attorney, someone who handles asset protection." "I don't want a divorce, Kevin." "I know you don't, but wanting something and needing something are two different things. Mom taught us that." He was right. Mom had taught us that. Thursday passed quietly. Brandon was normal, or whatever the new version of normal was. He didn't mention the apartment again. He didn't bring up money. He went to work, came home, watched ESPN, kissed me goodnight. If I didn't know better, I'd think Wednesday's conversation had never happened. But Friday evening, everything shifted again. I was in the kitchen making chicken stir-fry when Brandon's phone rang. He glanced at the screen, and something crossed his face, a tightness around his jaw, a quick darting of his eyes toward me. "I gotta take this," he said, and stepped out onto the back patio. Through the sliding glass door, I could see him pacing. His free hand was gesturing, big, agitated movements. His voice was too low to hear through the glass, but his body language screamed anxiety. The call lasted about 8 minutes. When he came back inside, his face was pale. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah, fine, just work stuff." "You look upset." "Rick's being a pain about the Q4 projections. It's nothing." He went upstairs without eating dinner. I heard the bedroom door close, and then, muffled, the sound of another phone call. This one lasted almost 20 minutes. That night, I didn't try to check his phone. I didn't need to. I could feel the current shifting beneath us, the ground becoming unstable. Something was being assembled in the dark, piece by piece, and I was running out of time to figure out what it was. Saturday morning, Brandon didn't mow the lawn. This was, in the entire history of our marriage, unprecedented. Saturday lawn mowing was his religion. Instead, he told me he needed to run some errands and left the house at 9 a.m. He didn't come back until almost 2 p.m. "Where were you?" I asked. "Had to go to the office to grab some files. Then I stopped at Home Depot." He wasn't carrying any bags from Home Depot. That afternoon, while Brandon was in the shower, his phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't pick it up. I didn't need to. The notification preview showed on the lock screen. "Linda, everything's set for Tuesday. Don't lose your nerve." Tuesday, 4 days away. Everything's set. My heart was hammering so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I walked downstairs, poured myself a glass of water, and stood at the kitchen sink, staring out the window at our unmowed lawn. I called Jennifer from the garage. "Something's happening Tuesday," I said. Linda texted him. She said everything's set. She told him not to lose his nerve. "Ashley, you need to get out of that house." "I'm not leaving my own house." "Then you need to be prepared for whatever's coming. Listen to me. Call a lawyer on Monday. First thing. I know someone, Rebecca Torres. She handled my cousin's divorce, and she's a pit bull. I'll text you her number." "Jen, what if I'm wrong? What if this is something totally innocent?" "Name one innocent explanation for everything's set for Tuesday, don't lose your nerve." I couldn't. Sunday was the longest day of my life. Brandon and I went to church, First Lutheran on Elm Street, where we'd been attending since we got married. We sat in our usual pew, 3rd row from the back, left side. Pastor Hendricks talked about trust and faithfulness. I almost laughed out loud. After church, Brandon suggested we go to brunch. We went to the Copper Kettle, our usual spot, and sat across from each other in a booth by the window. He ordered the Eggs Benedict. I ordered the French toast. We made small talk about the weather, about a new show on Netflix, about whether we should repaint the guest bedroom. It was the most normal, most excruciating meal I'd ever eaten. Halfway through brunch, Brandon reached across the table and took my hand. "Hey," he said, "I love you. You know that, right?" I looked into his eyes. They were brown, warm, familiar. The same eyes that had looked at me with wonder at that 4th of July barbecue 6 years ago. The same eyes that had teared up when he said, "I do." And now, behind that warmth, I could see calculation. I could see a plan forming. "I know," I said. "I love you too." He squeezed my hand and smiled. Monday morning, I called Rebecca Torres. "Mrs. Morrison, tell me everything," she said. And I did. Every detail, from the laptop to the texts to the mysterious Tuesday plan. Rebecca listened, asked sharp questions, and then laid it out for me in terms that left no room for wishful thinking. "Here's the good news," she said. "Minnesota is an equitable distribution state, not community property. Inheritance is generally considered separate property, especially when it hasn't been commingled with marital assets. If the apartment is in your name only and the inheritance funds are in your personal account, he has a very weak claim to any of it. And the bad news? The bad news is that he clearly knows about the assets and is actively conspiring with his mother to access them. That text exchange you described, figure out a way to get the money, that's concerning. If he tries to manipulate you into commingling funds, or if he somehow gets you to add his name to the apartment deed, or if he pressures you into a joint investment, he could strengthen a potential claim. So what do I do? You don't move any inheritance money into joint accounts. You don't sign anything. You don't agree to any real estate transactions involving your mother's apartment. And if things escalate, we file for divorce on our terms before he can file on his. I thanked her, paid the consultation fee, and drove to work with my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. Tuesday came. I left work at my normal time, 5:15 p.m. I drove home the usual route, past the Target and the Walgreens and the elementary school with the big oak tree out front. I pulled into the driveway and noticed Brandon's car was already there. He usually didn't get home until 5:45 or 6. I sat in my car for a full minute, staring at the house. White siding, blue shutters, the lawn still unmowed from Saturday. A house that had felt like home for 4 years and now felt like a trap. I walked inside. Brandon was sitting on the living room couch. And next to him, perched on the edge of the armchair like a queen holding court, was Linda. She was wearing a cream-colored blouse and too much perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same scent she always wore, so strong it hit me the moment I crossed the threshold. Her hair was freshly done, blonde highlights over gray roots, and her lips were painted a shade of coral that made her look like she was about to sell me a timeshare. "Ashley, sweetie!" Linda stood up and opened her arms for a hug I didn't want. "How are you, honey? Brandon told me about your mother's passing. I'm so sorry I didn't reach out sooner. I've just been dealing with my own health issues. You know how it is." Health issues. Linda's health issues were a rotating cast of vague complaints, back pain, fatigue, mysterious headaches that materialized whenever she needed attention or sympathy. "Thanks, Linda," I said, accepting the hug stiffly. "What brings you by?" "Can't a mother visit her son?" She laughed, a tinkling, artificial sound. "Actually, we wanted to talk to you about something, both of us. Right, Brandon?" Brandon was sitting with his elbows on his knees, hands clasped, staring at the carpet. He looked up when his mother said his name, and I saw something in his expression I hadn't expected. Guilt. Real, heavy, unmistakable guilt. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Ash, can you sit down?" I sat in the chair opposite them. The three of us formed a triangle in the living room, and the air between us felt thick enough to chew. "Here's the thing," Linda began, crossing her legs and leaning forward. "Brandon's been worried about you, about us, about our family's financial future. And I have to be honest with you, Ashley. I've been struggling. My condo association just hit us with a special assessment, $18,000 for roof repairs. On top of that, my Lexus needs a new transmission. That's another $4,500. And my credit cards," she waved her hand dismissively, as if her debt were a fly she could shoo away. "Well, let's just say I've gotten myself into a bit of a hole." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said carefully. "The thing is," Brandon cut in, "Mom needs help. And I was thinking, since you came into some money from your mom's estate, maybe we could help her out. As a family." There it was, the play, laid out on the table like a hand of cards. "How much help are we talking about?" I asked. Linda and Brandon exchanged a glance. It was quick, practiced, choreographed. "Well," Linda said, "if we could just borrow, and I do mean borrow, Ashley, I would pay back every cent. Maybe $60,000? That would cover the assessment, the car, the credit cards, and give me a little cushion." $60,000. A little cushion. I looked at Brandon. "You knew about my inheritance this whole time?" He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Yeah, I saw some documents on your laptop a couple weeks ago. I wasn't snooping, I was just checking email and they were right there." "And you told your mother?" "I told her because she's been stressed about money, and I thought maybe..." "You thought maybe my dead mother's money could solve your living mother's problems?" The room went silent. Linda's coral lips pressed into a thin line. Brandon's jaw tightened. "That's not fair," Linda said softly. "I know you're grieving, Ashley, but family helps family. That's what we do." I stood up. My legs were steady. My voice was calm. And somewhere deep inside me, my mother's voice was saying, clear as a bell, "There it is, baby. Now you see." "I need to think about it," I said. "Of course," Linda replied, her smile returning instantly, like a light switched back on. "Take all the time you need." But as I walked upstairs to the bedroom, I heard Linda whisper to Brandon, not quietly enough, "She'll come around. They always do when you give them the guilt trip." I closed the bedroom door, sat on the edge of the bed, and pressed my palms against my eyes until I saw stars. They always do. 2 days passed. I told Brandon I was still thinking about it. He was patient, suspiciously patient, and didn't bring it up again. But I noticed him texting more frequently, always angling his screen away. I noticed him making phone calls from the garage, and on Thursday evening, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. I was looking for a receipt in Brandon's jacket pocket. Legitimately, I needed the Home Depot return policy for a light fixture. And instead, I found a business card. White card, black text. Gregory Pullman, attorney at law, family law and asset division. He'd already talked to a divorce lawyer. While telling me he loved me at brunch, while holding my hand across the table, while asking me to help his mother with $60,000 of my inheritance, he was already preparing for war. I put the card back exactly where I found it and went into the bathroom and threw up. That night, lying next to him in the dark, I made a decision. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to confront him. I was going to be smarter than both of them. I texted Jennifer. "I need the hidden camera setup you used for your Airbnb, the one that looks like a phone charger." She replied immediately, "I'll bring it tomorrow. What's happening?" "I'll explain when I see you." Then I texted Rebecca Torres. "He's already consulted a divorce attorney. Gregory Pullman. I found the card. What do we do?" Rebecca's reply came at 11:47 p.m. "We accelerate. Come in Friday morning. Bring everything." I lay there in the dark, my husband breathing peacefully beside me, and felt the last thread of hope snap clean in two. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't a man venting to his mother. This was a coordinated plan to separate me from my inheritance, by charm if possible, by divorce if necessary. And I still didn't know about the kidnapping. That was coming. That was 3 days away, ticking closer, like a bomb I couldn't yet hear. Friday morning, I sat in Rebecca Torres's office at 8:30 a.m. before the dental clinic opened, with a folder full of screenshots, a printed copy of the apartment deed, and hands that wouldn't stop trembling. Rebecca's office was on the 14th floor of a glass tower in downtown Minneapolis, overlooking the river. She had dark hair pulled back tight, reading glasses on a chain, and a way of looking at you that made you feel like she could see through walls. Her desk was immaculate. 1 laptop, 1 legal pad, 1 pen. No family photos, no decorations, just work. "Show me everything," she said. I laid it out. The screenshots of Brandon's texts with Linda, the business card for Gregory Pullman, the estate documents, the timeline of events. Rebecca studied each piece, making notes on her legal pad in handwriting so precise it looked printed. "He's moving faster than I expected," she said. "Pullman is aggressive. He specializes in asset disputes during divorce. The fact that Brandon consulted him before even confronting you about the inheritance tells me this isn't spontaneous. This is strategic." So what happens now? Now we prepare. I'm going to draft a postnuptial agreement, not because I expect him to sign it, but because offering it creates a paper trail that shows you attempted to protect separate property. If he refuses, that refusal becomes evidence of intent. I'm also going to file a lis pendens on the downtown apartment as a precautionary measure, which essentially puts the world on notice that the property is subject to a potential legal claim. It prevents him from somehow forging documents or manipulating a sale. Can he even do that? The apartment's in my name. You'd be surprised what desperate people attempt. I had a case last year where a husband forged his wife's signature on a quitclaim deed and sold her rental property to his brother for $1. By the time she found out, the brother had taken out a mortgage against it. My stomach lurched. Brandon wouldn't... Mrs. Morrison, Rebecca took off her glasses and looked at me directly. 3 weeks ago, you would have said your husband wouldn't secretly read your private financial documents. You would have said he wouldn't conspire with his mother to access your inheritance. You would have said he wouldn't consult a divorce attorney while telling you he loved you over Eggs Benedict. Stop telling me what Brandon wouldn't do. Tell me what you're going to do. She was right. She was absolutely right. I sat up straighter in the chair. I'm going to protect what my mother left me, I said. Good. Now, this camera your friend is lending you, where are you planning to put it? The living room? If they're planning something for Tuesday, well, Tuesday was the text, but that already happened. That was the ambush with Linda asking for $60,000. But I think there's more coming. The way they looked at each other when I said I'd think about it, they have a next step. Minnesota is a one-party consent state for recording. You can record any conversation you're a part of. If they discuss this in front of you, it's admissible. But you cannot record conversations between Brandon and Linda that you're not present for. That crosses into wiretapping. Understood. One more thing, Rebecca leaned forward. The $60,000 Linda asked for. Don't give her a cent. Not a dollar, not a dime. If you give her money voluntarily, it could be argued that you've begun treating the inheritance as a marital asset, which weakens the separate property classification. I nodded. I thanked her. I wrote her a check for the $3,500 retainer, and I drove to work feeling, for the first time in days, like I had solid ground under my feet. That ground lasted approximately 9 hours. Jennifer came over Friday evening while Brandon was at what he claimed was a work happy hour. She brought the camera, a small black cube that looked exactly like an iPhone charging block. You plugged it into the wall, it connected to your phone via an app, and it recorded continuous video with audio. The resolution was sharp enough to read text on a phone screen from 6 feet away. We set it up in the living room, plugged into the outlet behind the side table next to the couch. Invisible unless you knew to look for it. How are you holding up? Jennifer asked, sitting cross-legged on my kitchen floor while I poured us both wine. I feel like I'm living with a stranger, I said. Every time he touches me, I want to scream. Every time he says, I love you, I want to ask him which version of me he loves, the wife or the bank account. You're going to get through this. Am I? Because right now it feels like I'm drowning and he's standing on the shore timing how long I can hold my breath. Jennifer stayed until 9. Brandon came home at 10, smelling like beer and something else, cologne that wasn't his. I didn't ask. I couldn't afford to care about that right now. One crisis at a time. Saturday. Sunday. The weekend passed in a fog of fake normalcy. Brandon mowed the lawn, finally, and I could hear the mower roaring outside while I sat in the bedroom, staring at the hidden camera app on my phone, watching the empty living room in real time. Nothing happened. No secret calls, no whispered plans. Just our house, quiet and still, looking exactly like the safe haven it used to be. Monday morning, Brandon kissed me goodbye and left for work. I stood at the kitchen window and watched his car disappear down the street. Then I checked the camera footage from the weekend, scrubbing through hours of nothing. Brandon watching football. Brandon eating chips. Brandon scrolling his phone, but the angle wasn't right to see the screen. Monday evening, Brandon came home and said, Hey, I talked to Mom today. She wanted me to tell you there's no pressure about the money. She feels bad about how it came across. That's nice of her, I said. She really does care about you, Ash. I know she can be a lot, but her heart's in the right place. I nodded and stirred the pasta sauce and said nothing. That night, Monday night, I was brushing my teeth when Brandon appeared in the bathroom doorway. His face was pale. His phone was in his hand. Ash, he said, his voice cracked. Something happened. What? It's my mom. I think she's been taken. Kidnapped. I stared at him. Toothpaste foam dripped down my chin. What are you talking about? She was supposed to call me at 8. She always calls at 8 on Mondays. She didn't call. I texted her, nothing. I called, straight to voicemail. Then I got this. He held up his phone. I took it. On the screen was a text from an unknown number, a photo of Linda bound to a chair, duct tape over her mouth, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Below the photo, "We have your mother. $250,000 cash. Instructions to follow. Do not contact police or she dies." And here we are, full circle, back to 2:47 a.m., back to the moment I started this story, back to Brandon shaking my shoulder with that calculating expression on his face. But now you know what I knew. Now you understand why, when I looked at that photo of Linda, kidnapped, in a chair with rope that wasn't even tied, I didn't feel fear. I felt a cold, crystalline fury that started in my chest and radiated outward until my fingertips tingled. "We need to call the police," I said. "No," Brandon grabbed my arm. "They said no police. They said she'll die." "Brandon, this is a kidnapping. We have to—" "Ashley, listen to me." He gripped both my shoulders. His eyes were wild. Too wild, I thought. Performatively wild. "They want $250,000. We don't have that kind of money." But he paused, and in that pause, I heard everything. "You do. Your mom's insurance money. The apartment. You could sell the apartment fast, take a loss if you have to. We can get the cash in a few days." I pulled back from his grip. "You want me to sell my dead mother's apartment to pay a ransom? To save my mother's life? Ashley, what choice do we have?" "We have the choice to call the police, Brandon. That's literally what they exist for." "And risk her getting killed? Are you insane?" I looked at him, really looked at him, the tears forming in his eyes, the tremor in his hands, the way his voice shook with what was supposed to be desperation. It was a good performance, I'll give him that. 6 months ago, it would have fooled me completely. "Let me see the photo again," I said. He handed me the phone. I zoomed in on the image. Linda's wrists. The rope was loose, draped, not tied. Her eyes, above the duct tape, weren't wide with terror. They were alert, focused, almost expectant. And in the background, just barely visible in the corner of the frame, was a cream-colored wall with a familiar mark, a small dent near the baseboard that I recognized from every holiday dinner I'd ever suffered through at Linda's condo. She was in her own living room. My mother-in-law had staged her own kidnapping, in her own home, to steal my inheritance. I handed the phone back to Brandon. My hand was steady. My voice was steady. Everything was steady. "What can we do, honey?" Brandon said, his voice thick with manufactured anguish. "We'll have to sell your downtown apartment. It's the only way." I just smiled, and I asked, "Brandon, when exactly did you and your mother plan this?" The color drained from his face so fast, I thought he might faint. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. No sound came out. "Because here's what's interesting," I continued, my voice quiet and even. "Yesterday, your mother asked me for $60,000, and I said I'd think about it. Today, she's been kidnapped for $250,000. That's quite an escalation in 24 hours. And that photo? She's in her own condo, Brandon. I can see the dent in the baseboard from where you helped her move the bookshelf last Thanksgiving." Ashley, you're not making sense. My mother is in danger." "Your mother is sitting in her living room with loosely draped rope on her wrists and duct tape she probably put on herself. This is a scam. You and Linda cooked this up to force me to liquidate my inheritance." Brandon's performance collapsed. The tears stopped. The trembling stopped. What replaced them was something I'd never seen on his face before. Raw, cornered anger. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said, but his voice had changed. The desperation was gone. What was left was flat and cold. "I'm calling the police," I said, reaching for my phone. "Ashley, don't." "Why not? If your mother's really been kidnapped, the police will help. If she hasn't, well, filing a false police report is a crime. So is extortion. So is fraud." "You would do that? You would send my mother to jail?" "I would send anyone to jail who tried to steal $250,000 from me, including my husband." We stood there in the bathroom, 2 feet apart, the fluorescent light buzzing overhead. Toothpaste was still on my chin. My hair was in a messy bun. I was wearing an old college t-shirt and pajama pants with little cats on them, and I had never felt more powerful in my entire life. Brandon broke first. He looked away, ran his hand through his hair, and let out a long, shaky breath. But it wasn't defeat. It was recalibration. I could see him reshuffling, rethinking, finding his next angle. "Fine," he said. "You're right. I'll call Mom and make sure she's okay. This whole thing is maybe she's overreacting. Maybe it's a scam targeting her, not us. Let me just call her." He walked out of the bathroom with his phone, and I heard him go downstairs. I stood very still, listening to his footsteps, and then I looked at myself in the mirror. The woman staring back at me had dark circles under her eyes and toothpaste on her chin, and a husband who had just tried to steal her dead mother's legacy. And that woman was not going to lose. I wiped my chin, I picked up my phone, and I texted Rebecca Torres 3 words: "It's happening. Now." Then I opened the camera app and checked the living room feed. Brandon was on the couch, phone to his ear, and even through the tiny screen, I could read his lips clearly enough to know he was saying, "She figured it out. We need a new plan." I screenshot it, I saved it, and I waited for whatever was coming next, because I knew with absolute certainty that Brandon and Linda weren't done. People who stage kidnappings don't give up after one failed attempt. They escalate, and I was going to be ready. I didn't sleep that night either, but this time it wasn't confusion keeping me awake, it was strategy. I lay perfectly still, breathing slow and even, while Brandon tossed and turned beside me, checking his phone every 20 minutes, texting furiously under the covers like a teenager past curfew. At 4:15 a.m., he got up, went downstairs, and made a phone call. I know because the camera caught every second of it. On the feed, I watched him pace the living room in his boxers and a wrinkled t-shirt, phone pressed to his ear. The audio was muffled but audible. "She's not buying it, Mom." I know. We have to try something else. What about the police angle? What if we actually file a report and make it look real?" "No, she won't call. I told her not to. Just stay at Carol's until we figure this out." "Yeah, okay. Love you too." Carol. That was Linda's sister. She lived in Egan, about 30 minutes south. So Linda wasn't even pretending to be kidnapped anymore. She'd already relocated to her sister's house, probably sitting on Carol's floral couch eating wheat thins and plotting her next move. I screenshot the camera timestamp. I saved the video clip to my cloud drive, the one Brandon didn't know about, the one Jennifer had helped me set up. Then I texted Rebecca Torres at 5:02 a.m. I have him on camera. He called Linda. She's at her sister Carol's house in Egan. The kidnapping is completely fabricated. He's discussing next steps. Rebecca replied at 6:14 a.m. "Don't confront him. Come to my office at noon. Bring everything. We're filing today." Tuesday morning, the real Tuesday, 1 week after Linda's ambush in our living room, Brandon sat across from me at the breakfast table and performed grief like a man auditioning for a Lifetime movie. His eyes were red, his hands were wrapped around a coffee mug, his voice was hoarse. "I've been up all night," he said, "thinking about Mom. I'm terrified, Ash." "I can see that," I said, pouring orange juice. "I think we need to act fast. The longer we wait, the more danger she's in. If you could liquidate the apartment quickly, even at a loss." "Brandon," I set the orange juice down, "I'm not selling the apartment." "Ashley, my mother could die." "Your mother is at Carol's house in Egan." The silence that followed was so absolute I could hear the refrigerator humming. Brandon's face went through 4 expressions in 2 seconds: shock, fury, calculation, and then a mask of confused innocence. "What? What are you talking about? Why would she be at Carol's?" "Because you called her at 4:15 this morning from the living room and told her to stay at Carol's until you figured out a new plan. You also told her I wasn't buying the kidnapping story." His jaw worked. No sound came out. I have it on video, Brandon. Audio and video. You standing in our living room in your boxers, talking to the woman who's supposedly been kidnapped, discussing how to trick me into selling my mother's apartment. He stood up so fast his chair scraped across the kitchen floor. You recorded me? You put a camera in our house? Minnesota is a one-party consent state. I was present in the home. It's perfectly legal, which is more than I can say for staging a fake kidnapping to extort $250,000 from your wife. This is insane. You're insane. His voice had gone high and tight, the voice of a man who knows he's cornered. I'm calling my lawyer. Gregory Pullman? The divorce attorney whose card I found in your jacket pocket last Thursday? Go ahead, call him. And while you're at it, tell him about the kidnapping scheme, because I'm sure he'd love to know his client is involved in felony-level fraud. Brandon grabbed his keys off the counter and walked out the front door. He didn't slam it. He closed it with exaggerated care, which was somehow worse. I heard his car start, back out of the driveway, and disappear down the street. I sat at the kitchen table for 5 minutes, perfectly still. Then I picked up my phone and called Kevin. It's done, I said. I confronted him. How'd he take it? About how you'd expect. He called me insane and left. Where's he going? My guess? Egan, to Linda's sister's house, to regroup. Ash, listen. Pack a bag, go to Jennifer's. Don't be alone in that house when he comes back. I'm not leaving my house, Kevin. Then I'm driving up. I'll be there by tonight. You don't have to. I'm already putting on my boots. I'll be there by 8. He hung up before I could argue. That was Kevin, emotional intelligence of a cinder block, but when it mattered, he showed up. At noon, I sat in Rebecca Torres's office and handed her a flash drive containing every piece of evidence I'd gathered. The text screenshots, the camera footage, the fake kidnapping photo, the timeline of events. Rebecca reviewed everything with the focus of a surgeon. When she finished, she took off her glasses and looked at me. This is extraordinary, she said. The camera footage alone is devastating. But the kidnapping scheme? Ashley, this isn't just grounds for divorce. This is criminal. Filing a false report, attempted extortion, conspiracy to defraud. If you want to pursue criminal charges, you have enough here. I want the divorce first, I said. I want to be free of him. Then we'll talk about charges. Smart. Here's what I'm filing today. Petition for dissolution of marriage, emergency motion for exclusive possession of the marital home, and a restraining order based on the extortion attempt. Given the evidence, I expect the judge to grant the emergency motions within 48 hours. And the inheritance? Completely protected. He never had access to the funds, the apartment is solely in your name, and nothing was commingled. His attorney can argue till he's blue in the face. He has no claim. I signed the papers, all of them. Every signature felt like a stitch closing a wound. Kevin arrived at 7:45 p.m., 15 minutes early, driving his beat-up Ford F-150 with Colorado plates. He walked in the front door carrying a duffel bag and a 6-pack of Coors, looked around the living room and said, "So this is the house of horrors, huh?" Don't start. I'm not starting, I'm observing. He set the beer on the counter and pulled me into a hug, a real one, the kind that lasts longer than it should, the kind that says, "I've got you," without using words. When he let go, his eyes were wet, but he blinked it away fast. "Mom would have been proud of you," he said. "You know that, right?" I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Brandon came back at 10 p.m. He walked through the door and stopped dead when he saw Kevin sitting at the kitchen table. "Kevin," he said flatly. "Brandon." Kevin didn't stand up, didn't extend a hand. Just sat there, with his arms crossed and his jaw set, looking at Brandon with an expression that could strip paint. "This is between me and Ashley," Brandon said. "No, it's not. Not anymore. You tried to scam my sister using a fake kidnapping. That makes it between you and the whole family." Brandon looked at me. "You told your brother?" "I told everyone, Brandon. My brother, my lawyer, my best friend. The only person I haven't told yet is the police, and that's coming." Something broke in him then. I could see it, the way his shoulders dropped, the way his face crumbled from defiance into something smaller and uglier. Desperation. Ashley, please, can we just talk? Alone? 5 minutes. No. I made a mistake. Mom pushed me into it. She's the one who came up with the kidnapping idea. I didn't even want to do it. You called her at 4 in the morning to coordinate your next move. You begged me to sell my dead mother's apartment. You looked me in the eyes and pretended to cry about a kidnapping you helped stage. That's not a mistake, Brandon. That's a choice. He stood in the doorway of his own kitchen, and for the first time, he looked like what he was, a small man who had gambled on his wife's grief and lost. I want you out of this house by Friday, I said. My attorney filed for divorce today. You'll be served tomorrow. There's a restraining order pending. If you contact Linda about my finances again, it becomes a criminal matter. Brandon opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Kevin, who hadn't moved, hadn't blinked. Then he turned, walked upstairs, and I heard the bedroom door close. Kevin looked at me. You okay? No, I said, but I will be. Brandon was served the next morning at his office. His colleague Rick signed as witness. I know this because Rebecca Torres called me at 11 a.m. to confirm. It's done, she said. He has 30 days to respond. But Ashley, I want you to know something. Pullman's office already called mine. They're not contesting the inheritance. They know they can't win that fight. What they're going to push for is a larger share of marital assets, the house equity, the retirement accounts, maybe spousal support. Let them push, I said. I have a video of my husband conspiring with his mother to extort me. That footage will play beautifully in front of a judge. Rebecca laughed, a short, sharp sound. I like you, Mrs. Morrison. I'll be in touch. The divorce took 4 months. Brandon fought for the house. He didn't get it. He fought for half my 401k. He got 40%, which Rebecca said was generous given the circumstances. He fought for spousal support. The judge denied it after reviewing the camera footage, the fake kidnapping photo, and the text messages. In the judge's written opinion, she noted that Brandon's pattern of deceptive and manipulative conduct, including a staged kidnapping designed to coerce the petitioner into liquidating inherited assets, demonstrates a fundamental breach of marital trust that this court cannot reward. Linda was never charged. I thought about it, hard, but in the end, I decided that watching her son's marriage implode and losing access to my money was punishment enough. Kevin disagreed. Jennifer disagreed. Rebecca said it was my call, and she respected it. The house sold in March for $342,000. After splitting the equity and paying closing costs, I walked away with $164,000. Combined with my inheritance, the apartment, the insurance, the savings, I had a net worth of just under $800,000. More money than my mother had ever seen in her life. More than she'd ever dreamed of for me. I moved into Mom's downtown apartment, the one she'd paid off in 15 years, the one she'd bought so no man could ever take it from her. 740 square feet of freedom, 14th floor, with a view of the Minneapolis skyline that made my chest ache every time I looked at it. I kept the apartment exactly as she'd left it. Her curtains, her kitchen table, the little ceramic cat on the windowsill that she'd bought at a garage sale when I was 12. I added one thing. A framed photo of her on the bookshelf, taken at my college graduation, her face split by the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Jennifer came over for wine on my first night there. We sat on the floor because I hadn't bought new furniture yet, drinking a $20 bottle of Pinot Noir and looking out the window at the city lights. So, she said, how does it feel? I thought about it, really thought about it. It feels like a door, I said, one I can walk through alone. She clinked her glass against mine. Brandon moved in with Linda after the divorce. Last I heard from a mutual friend, they were arguing about money. Linda's Lexus finally died, and she wanted Brandon to buy her a new one. Some patterns, it turns out, don't break. They just find new victims. I never remarried, not because I'm bitter and not because I'm afraid. Because my mother taught me something that took me 32 years and one fake kidnapping to understand. The safest person to trust with your life is yourself. Everything else, the love, the partnership, the shared Google calendars and Saturday morning routines, those are bonuses. Beautiful, fragile bonuses that can disappear overnight if you build them on someone else's honesty instead of your own strength. Mom's apartment is warm tonight. The ceramic cat catches the lamplight. And I am exactly where I'm supposed to be, home, whole, and holding every key to every door that matters.